Hello there. In this video, we are going to decide whether it's better to work for an ad agency or a marketing agency or a client side in a marketing team. The first thing we are going to talk about is workload. Now, generally working on a agency side can be summed up in one sentence, which is work hard and party hard. Now, if you're working on an agency or you have been working in an agency, you know that based on the contract you work from, let's say 9 to 5, but it is never the case. Because primarily when you work for an agency, the business model is you are providing a service, and the agency will obviously have the team in such a way that they take most of the work from everyone in the team. On the other hand, if you are working on a client side, you have consistent workload. Obviously there can be some months when you are very busy based on the nature of the business, but obviously when in the beginning of the year you have a marketing calendar, you know what are the important events or what are the important seasonality your business caters to, so you already know everything in advance, and the workload is usually consistent over a period of time, and you basically can predict what's going to come your way on a particular day. But however, when you work for an agency, it's all surprises. The day is full of surprises. Nobody can predict that how the day is going to be. And when you work for an agency, typically when you leave to work in the morning, you never know what time you're going to come back, because if you're leaving the office at 6, at 5:30 a client can give you a call and tell you, okay, the creative is, this campaign is not working, I want a report in the morning for my management, so that you will have to work on that report. So it's very unpredictable. On the client side, on the other hand, you have predictable timelines. You know that how your day is going to be, and generally people work within the time frame, let's say 9 to 5, or sometimes there can be exceptions, but not as often as the agency side. So in this case, if you want to have a work-life balance and you want to follow a routine, then client side obviously is better for you. But if a busy schedule is something which gets you out of the bed and working overtime, facing challenges every time, then agency side is for you based on this particular parameter. Now this leads us to our second point, which is opportunities to grow in your career. If you are working for an agency or you will in future work for agencies, you have to know that in terms of learnings and trainings, it will be very extensive, because agencies usually have a lot of training plans of their own. And even when you're working for companies like Google, you're working on Google ads, Facebook ads and other companies, they schedule trainings for you. So there is a lot of learnings and trainings involved in a career when you work for an agency. And in terms of exposure, I mean, most of the people, obviously when you start working for an agency in a while, or even in certain cases when you start working for agencies, you are involved in a lot of creating pitches or presenting pitches, which is a lot of exposure for anyone. And I would say that is one thing you get exposed to when you work for agencies, which you do not get on the client side. The other good thing about working for agencies is, if you have been working for an agency or you have agency side experience, it's very easy to get a job role on the client side. In most of the cases, what I have seen recently is all the big companies, they prefer people who have been working for agencies, because they know that technically they will be very sound and they are used to multitasking, they are used to pressures, and as well as if the company is working with an agency, they know that this guy can handle them properly, and they know the in and outs of what happens in an agency. But the same is not true on the other side. If you have a lot of client side experience, but when there is hiring for agencies, I have personally seen people in agencies are a bit reluctant if you just have client side experience, because there is a lot more that's needed to work on a client side for a senior role. So it really boils down to, if continuous learning about new businesses every day gets you out of the bed, then probably agency side is for you. On the client side, on the other hand, is you will not be technically very sound in most of the cases, and you will be more of a controller than being creative and doing the actual stuff. If that's what you want with a routine, then probably the client side is good for you. Now this leads us to our third point, which is salaries. Now it's a known fact that generally in most of the cases, statistically, client side jobs pay a bit more than their counterpart agency side roles. However, there is a catch in this. Now, if you're starting your career with an agency and on the client side, agency side, you might get lesser salary. But when you look at the progression and how quickly you can get your promotions, how quickly you can raise your salaries, it's ideal to work for an agency because you can quickly get promotions and salary hikes. But on the client hand side, usually there is very less progression in terms of promotions as well as the salaries, but initially client side pays a bit higher. But when you look at the overall picture, like, it really depends on who you are. Like, if you want to get a job on the client side with a salary which will be satisfied for a while, along with proper work-life balance and not a lot of promotions and salary hikes and a growth, then client side is better for you. But if you are very ambitious and you want to start with maybe a bit lesser salary, but you are very ambitious, you want to achieve a lot within a short span of time, then there is no other way than joining an agency. Now, this leads us to our fourth point, which is work environment and culture. Now, as I mentioned before, agencies can be just summed up in one line, which is work hard and party hard. There are a lot of parties involved, there are a lot of client dinners involved, there are a lot of other kind of functions and parties involved, and the culture and work environment in agencies usually is young, vibrant, fast paced. At the same time, in agencies, like, the work culture and it's all, everybody has short term goals, like you take one day at a time and the challenges that come with it. And also, the work culture in agencies is very competitive. Everybody is doing the same thing and everybody is trying to prove that they are better than the rest. However, on the other hand, when you join a client side, in most of the cases, it's more comfortable, it's more routine, it's more about a family feel, and they usually focus on long-term goals. There's no firefighting going on. But in agencies, it's always the firefighting and short-term goals. But in client side, it's long-term goals. They focus on, for example, if they have to post some content, they have to create some content, they have a campaign, they know it well in advance, and they discuss internally with different kind of stakeholders, which collectively come to a conclusion and they approve a particular plan or a campaign. So it's more comfortable on the client side, but it's more competitive and fun on the agency side. So depending on what do you want in your career, you can decide on which side to pick for you. This leads us to our fifth point, which is working hours. We basically touched on this briefly, but what I want to mention here is based on my experience and the colleagues I have spoken to. When you work for an agency, you sell a service. So typically you work round the clock. Like, you probably might be in office from 9 to 7 or 9 to 8, but at the end of the day, you are always there on WhatsApp or other kind of communication. Like, in a lot of cases, whenever a client comes to know about any particular problem, let's say they see a campaign, they see the creative is not rendering properly, or it's rendering, the creative is being displayed on some kind of content, they don't want it along, they will send you screenshots in the night, and you will have to work on and address that issue then and there. You cannot tell them, okay, yeah, we saw it, let's see tomorrow. That doesn't happen in agencies, because you are a service provider. There are a lot of things you have to consider. You basically work 24/7. You don't work 24/7, but you have to be there, you have to be work ready all the time. Sometimes your client will tell you, okay, I have a very urgent important meeting tomorrow morning, I need the report in the morning. So you probably have to start working, coordinating with your team. So you have to be always work ready. On the other hand, if you talk about client side, typically people work during the business hours, and they hire people in a way that they can manage all the work they do within these business hours. Now, this leads us to our last point, which is what kind of experience you gain and what kind of knowledge you gain while working on any of these sides. Now, typically in agencies, you deal with multiple businesses, multiple business models, as we discussed. You soak up knowledge about a lot of things going on in the market, which makes you smarter digital marketer because you deal with different kind of audiences, geographies, which obviously gives you a holistic view about digital marketing. And if you want to go into strategy planning, you obviously have a lot of things and a lot of knowledge about a lot of different businesses and products, which gives you a great help even if later you want to settle on one particular industry or just stick to one industry or client side. Now, this in my experience is typically a deal breaker because a lot of people want to, in the beginning of their career, want to work for agencies and get this holistic view, even if they later want to settle down on one particular industry on a client side. And as we discussed before, when you work with wide range of clients, you have demand on client side. A lot of client side are hiring for certain roles. They are just hiring people who have worked for agencies and have worked for different kind of clientele. So that's all the 6 points which I mentioned in the beginning. So I hope this will help you in any way to decide which career is better for you. Let me know in the comments if you think that I missed on something, or if you just feel otherwise about anything we discussed in this video. Thank you so much. I will see you in the next one.